Hi, and welcome to the Feeding Hour. On this episode, Abby and I discuss Hunt, Gather, Parent by Dr. Michaeleen Doucleff, a book that explores ancient parenting practices. We talk about starting chores early, inviting children into adult activities, and delaying smartphone use to protect the developing nervous system. We hope you enjoy. Hey, Abby.
Hi, Catherine. How are you today?
I'm well. How are you?
Good.
Good. I'm
Um,
excited for our episode today.
Me too. We're trying something a little new. I'm excited too.
Yes, so today Abby and I are going to talk about some of our favorite books that reflect how we got into attachment parenting, attachment feeding, and just our interests in kind of mother-baby bond. So, Abby, I'm going to ask you to kick us off and explain your book to us, and I'll ask you some questions.
Yes. I'm so excited for this little book club episode.
Yes.
We kind of wanted to maybe throw this in sporadically, just because we know busy parents are not always finding time to read.
Yeah.
So you can hear the spark notes from us.
Yeah.
But one book I've read kind of a good amount of parenting books, and I feel like this one has been my favorite. It's like the one I always go to like recommend to new moms, and it's called Hunt, Gather, Parent. Um
Mm.
and it's by mm, I think how you say her name is mm, Michaeleen or Micheline Doucleff, a PhD. And it says what ancient cultures can teach us about the lost art of raising happy, helpful little humans. And basically, the book um, goes into written by this woman's perspective who has a toddler girl who was driving her crazy and like she felt lost with parenting, and she was a writer. And so she took her daughter on this adventure where they went and immersed themselves in Mayan culture, Inuit culture, and then the Hadzabe culture. And they kind of, these are hunter-gatherer societies that are still present. Um, and she just wanted to find out like how do they parent, and what are kind of like the lost art, and like um just like how do these cultures approach different things. um and I loved the book. Like it was just so different than any other parenting book that I've read, and I can talk about some of the lessons I took from it,
Yeah.
and applying it to my 3.5-year-old. I read it when he was like one. So kind of like got through the newborn phase, becoming a toddler and starting tantrums, and just developing it. It was like I felt like I was a real parent now. I was like, oh
Yeah.
shoot, like I have to learn how to like how am I gonna approach discipline, or how am I gonna approach like big things, or just like teaching boundaries. And yeah, I feel like that is something that I wish that we had more
Mm.
experience and kind of exposure to before you're thrown into it. But this
Yeah.
book was very helpful.
Okay, follow-up question, the author.
Yeah.
So when you say
Mhm.
she kind of engaged with these cultures, did she learn about
Mhm.
them and then kind of start to incorporate those practices into her life and then
Mhm.
report how it went, or what did that look like?
So she brought her daughter. What she says in the book is she brought her daughter to on the trip with her, and
Oh,
like literally immersed herself and her daughter in this culture, and tried to like
wow.
observe what the people were doing, and then also um, apply it when she got back home. She lived in San Francisco, and she when she got back home, she tried to apply it. And she even I'll talk about that at the end. Something that she did apply that was like I was like, oof, I'm not brave enough to do that one. Um, but a lot of them I did apply to, and I was like, wow, this is. I mean, it kind of was already a little bit how I was raising Jacques, but I think that it just gave me more confidence and like ideas of how to do it.
Yes, practical
And
ideas.
it's yeah, so we can
Wow.
dive right in if you're ready. Or do you have any
Yeah.
other
Well,
questions?
so Mayan culture and what were the other two?
Into it.
Into it.
So like, like igloo type, like very
Yes.
cold Eskimo
Yeah.
cultures. And then And then Hadzabi was, I believe it was an Asian culture. I'm forgetting where because it was a while ago that I read this, but I was reviewing it this week, and oh, I think it was Tanzania.
Okay,
Was where
very
the
cool.
last culture was.
Okay.
So not Asian, Tanzania
Yeah.
in Africa. Okay.
Okay. Got it.
Okay, so the Mayan culture, and this is also like you should read the book yourself if anyone is able
I
to,
will.
because I'm just gonna give like a sprinkling.
Yeah, we'll
Um,
link it in the show notes.
yeah, but okay, the Mayan culture, this section was called like helpful and flexible kids, and she kind of talked about her goal with writing the book, and she said how like, and it's kind of like when we did the why what should we know about breastfeeding episode. It's like, okay, why do we care about raising kids in a certain way? And I think like my goal as a parent is like to raise a an adaptable, like, you know, good mental health, child that can obviously achieve what they want to achieve in the world, but have good mental health and have yeah, just be, especially with toddlerhood, like learn how to be flexible in different environments, like whether that's school or interacting with peers or interacting with adults, like that's kind of the goal. And then obviously kids have to have tantrums and learn how to manage their emotions, but if we could set up their environment or set up the way we're interacting with them to decrease power struggles and decrease um, or at least help them move through their big feelings, like
Yes.
that would be helpful. So I feel like that's her what she talked about as her goals, and she also talked a lot about how like parents in the US have a lot of control based
Yeah.
tactics sometimes, like we like to have scheduled feeding, scheduled sleep, like have a lot of control and busy schedules, and so she's saying what she observed in these other cultures were a little bit different.
Yeah. So, how
So
did
that
the
was a
Mayans
good perspective.
specifically parent in a way that you found beneficial or helpful
Okay,
too?
so yeah, so they have this term called accommodado, and
Mhm.
it's basically like training helpfulness. And so you include kids in your chores. And so when I started trying to apply this to Jacques at that age, at like age 2, it definitely like slowed me down. Like it wasn't like it was easier to do the dishes by having him included, but it did, like kids love to have a purpose and love to have a job. And so letting them do things that are age appropriate. So the book talked a lot about how you have to scaffold. So it really spoke to me as a therapist because that's like our whole job when we're trying to teach kids new skills. But it was like, oh yeah, duh. Like if you want to teach kids how to be helpful, then you need to start that at an early age and like basically train it and scaffold it. So what that looks like is like, okay, he might not be able to touch the knives. So I'm going to first take out the knives and then say, hey buddy, can you come help me put away these spoons? And you kind of model and you're doing it together. And so they talked a lot about like joining in and doing it together, but you're still giving them that independence and they feel so in control and like helpful, um and they used 3 words. They said show, encourage, request. So like show them how you are doing it, so you're including them, like, okay, I'm putting away the knives right here. And then encourage, like, oh, you can do it with the spoons, do you know where the spoons go? And then request their help. So I guess that could be, do you want to try the spoons? Or so you're just like joining them into it instead of being like, go play and I'm gonna do the dishes.
Yes.
Because a lot of moms, like, that is what we end up doing, and it's great. Like there's definitely a place for it for independent play, and like, but a lot of kids aren't great at independent play,
Yes.
and especially first children, I think it's really cool if you can help them get involved in your chores with you.
Yeah. And thinking about the alternative, it's like, no, mom needs to do this. And then you unload the dishwasher. And then at 7, 8, or whenever you try to incorporate
Yeah,
chores, it's like, okay, now
I don't
this
want to
thing
do
that you've never done before, do the whole
that.
thing.
Yes,
It's incredibly overwhelming. So
yes.
to kind of invite, like you said, scaffold them starting at a young age is seems like super beneficial. So have you seen fruits in parenting of using this? How has
Oh,
this worked for you?
yes. I have seen, I mean, this kid is so helpful. Like and not to like brag about Jock, but
No, brag.
he no, I mean he obviously has every kid has their own challenges to work through, but and this could be his personality too. But he loves to clean, like he loves to put things away. He loves to help me. Like, of course, sometimes if he's in the mood, he's like, no, I want to keep playing this or whatever. But I do think he always wants to join in. And sometimes it is like annoying. You're like, hey, I just kind of wanted to do this on my own. And it's more difficult to have to show him how to do it because now as they get older, you obviously can let them do more and they'll want to do more. So like now he wants to cut the strawberries and like I would rather just cut them myself, but like he kind of wants to get out his little Montessori knife and like cut it and take like 10 minutes to cut 5 strawberries. But like he's working on those skills and I do think it's a good way to keep him busy and keep him and teach him like real skills in
Mm.
life. And that's not to say he doesn't do pretend play too. I think there's room for all of it, but yeah, she even talked about in the book how like Americans have all these play kitchens. And it's like, okay, but you could also just like let them
Use a
help
real
with like
kitchen.
real stuff. She was saying that kids know the difference. And like sometimes and I noticed that with Jacques, like he will say, I don't want to. Sometimes he'll cook in his little play kitchen, but a lot of times he'll want to do the real thing, like make a real spoon. He loves doing that.
Wow. Okay, I love that. So Mayans starting chores early and kind of
Starting chores
scaffolding
early,
them
be
up
helpful,
to be
include
able to
them.
complete these tasks on their own.
And then, like when they're
Wow.
12,
Okay. Mhm.
how it works as a toddler and as like a 12-year-old, like then it was like these 12-year-olds who were like independently just thinking themselves like, oh, I should go start cooking dinner. And she that was something so interesting in the book because she started out with just like observing the older children being so helpful, and then she asked the moms like, how did you get this? And then she kind of saw that like, oh, with the toddler this is how they're starting to train it, and they just never stopped the whole way. And one last thing about this is I wanted to look it up before but I didn't get to it, but there's a statistic that I've read recently about um like do, one of the early predictors of mental health
Yeah.
success, like good mental health for
Yeah.
teens and
Mentally
adults,
healthy.
and successful adults is like doing chores as children. So I know that this not only is it helpful because we like the behavior, but it's also actually good for kids to have this type
Yes.
of purpose
Yeah.
in their life. Yeah.
Yeah, task completion, the
Hmm.
ability to see that you've done something productive and that
Yes.
you matter, like, actually, right? You are contributing to a whole,
Hmm.
to your household. So that's really, really interesting. Okay, let's talk about the Inuits then, if you're ready.
Uh-huh. Yes. Okay, so the Inuit, this is the perfect segue because their whole thing is emotional intelligence,
Mm,
and they talk about togetherness, and so it's a lot about um they want to welcome the kids into their world, so they take kids to they call it giving kids their membership card, and they take them um to the like dentist with them or to like join them in the adult world. Or in this culture it might not be to the dentist, but it might be like doing a certain adult activity chore or like adult party or whatever. And so their point is like give them their membership card, like kind of teach them that like you are part of this family, you are part of this unit, and I want to take you on with me, but but I expect you to act appropriate in those environments. And so they kind of like they have this like, I guess, I don't know. It's almost like a sternness that she described, or like a way of teaching kids like, okay, you can come with me, but it's like a privilege and you need to act right when you're
yes.
and so
Yeah.
I try to do that with Jacques. That is hard, but I do I do try to do that like in our world. I think it's hard in our culture because like some places you feel like our culture isn't accepting of that because kids will still be kids.
Yeah.
But I think yeah, if you can kind of try to like talk about before, like, hey, when we go into a dentist office, this is what you can expect, and this we have to sit quietly in the waiting room and and like bring activities for them. Or I think in the book they didn't even they just like say, come on, this is how we do it. And
Yeah.
kind of let them do their own thing within that world.
Yeah, that's really interesting too
Mhm.
because right in adulthood, if you're an
Mhm.
adult and you don't have the appropriate behavior for a certain sphere, then you won't be allowed in that sphere. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like if you are in a golf match and you're can't control yourself, you're going
Swinging
to be
or
asked to
something.
leave. You know?
That's
So it's
so
like it's just again preparation for that adulthood and an extension of attachment parenting because it's like you are a part of me, I wear you, and then you come with me places,
Yep.
but you can come with me places. This is how we act when we are in this place, you know?
Yes. Yes. And I think it's you have to start small. Like I think you build your confidence and their tolerance. Like I wouldn't start out with like, let me take my kid to like this really quiet, tea room or something.
Right.
But maybe you start out with like, okay, I'm gonna take them to like maybe like a kid friendly like the chiropractor for your baby and like
Yeah.
so you're like okay my toddler needs to come with me. I need to talk to them about this is what you can do while we're here. It's a 30-minute appointment. I can kind of expect you to handle yourself during that. And sometimes it's been not great and I'm like or I've done a coffee shop that's kind of loud and sometimes not going well and then I'm like okay you know what we'll try again another day but
Yeah.
I do try to like not shy away from exposing
Yeah.
him to the adult world because I think if you always, yeah, well, if you want your kid to be able to like come to a restaurant with you and like just participate in the world with you.
Yes. And then, and again, it's kind of like the dishwashing thing where it's like,
Yeah.
oh, and then we expect them in kindergarten, if they've always been at home or separate from an adult, we expect them to just go out into the world and like enjoy your peers. And it's like, wait, or go with your teacher somewhere, go to these field trips. And it's like, that's too much at once. You know, that's scaffolding them, bringing them these adult places. Um, more
Hmm.
more often. And I think that it's like communicating like, I want you with me. I want you with me in these
Yes. Oh, yeah.
places as a mother to a child. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. My son just asked me the other day, like, oh, can we go to the grocery store more often again? Which we still go all the time, but I'm like, that's one of his favorite activities is going to the grocery store. And that's a really like low stakes practice, I think,
Yeah.
because parents know that or other customers know there's going to be kids in a grocery store. It's not like that weird. They have the driving carts a lot of times or and you can kind of like set the expectation for your kid, like you're gonna sit in the cart and there's so much distraction and like fun things you can look at, language opportunities to be like, if your kid's younger, like naming all the um, different fruits and vegetables. And
Yeah.
yeah, and then that's just such a good way to A, get your chores done and B, like include them in the world. And then if they start screaming in the store, then you can
You
just
can
wrap up
leave.
real quick and leave, or you can take a pause and try to talk about how to handle like how to how we're supposed to act in the store and
Yeah.
um it you're inevitably going to have some fails if you try this style of parenting but I think the more people do try it then our culture will be more accepting of it also.
Yeah. Well, there's so many parallels between this and feeding, particularly breastfeeding, because it's
Yes.
like with breastfeeding, you have to try and try and try over again and stick with it, which is what this type of parenting is. And
Hmm.
just to be able to also talk about social acceptance, like you might get some eyes in both fields, you know what I mean? Like a screaming
Yes.
child in the store, I'm a parent, this is what happens and this is life.
Yeah.
And I like the idea that
And
if we
people know people most people have if they don't if they haven't been around kids at all then like okay then they might give you more eyes or
right,
whatever but like they I don't know then who cares.
yeah.
Feel like
And
you have to just get a thick skin.
normalizing like these activities of going to the grocery store means you don't have to come up with like field trips or like these super crazy activities. It's like, no, that
Yes.
was our activity for the day, going to the
Yeah,
grocery
that
store.
was the activity.
And it was a
I
good
know.
one.
It's so funny because I am like I love going to the zoo and like going to the children's museum and things like that. But she says in the book, she's like, I never want to go to a children's museum in my life. Like I hate that. I don't want to go to an aquarium. I don't want that. Like, and she's like, if you don't want to be in kid places, you don't need to be. She's like, just
Yeah.
make whatever you want to do
A
fun for
kid
them
place.
that's enough. Like, and I thought that was such a good perspective because it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
like you don't have to make time for all of these like kids just really just want to be with you and like learn
Yes.
about the world that way.
Yeah.
um Another cool thing just that she said was if they are trying to help, the Inuit parents like really don't correct them. Like they show them how to do it the right way, but they try really hard if they are helping, like do not criticize them because you want them to feel successful. And then you want them to like find that motivation on their own. So they said motivation is like three ingredients: autonomy, connectedness, and competency. So like the competency comes from like, trying and learning how to do the task. Like putting on their shoes, for example, like you help them a few times. But then autonomy is like they know where their shoes are, they know that they need to that they can put it on themselves and that they build their confidence in that way. And
Yeah.
then the connectedness, I noticed this a lot with putting on shoes because like my son loves me to put on his shoes if he's not feeling connected to me. But if he is feeling really connected and like really good in the morning, then he will go automatically do it himself.
Oh, that's really cool. That's really sounds like a really good awareness about like the connectedness and him asking you of things because it's not like he's being demanding. He wants to feel connected to his mom, and they're the difference, and that's
Yes.
really a really cool shift. And the
Yeah.
point about like talking, just like this bonding and between the parent and the child, it's just like these tasks can be gradually like shifted. Sometimes they're going to need more dependence, sometimes they're going to show more independence and just like going with that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's so true. I think that's a big thing that this book taught me, and just that parenting for these couple of years have taught me is just that like independence does not come like all of a sudden they master that skill and then they're independent with it. Like it's like anything in like the therapy world too. It's like they do it in this context and they do it when all these conditions are met, but then they don't do it all the time right away. Like,
Yeah.
so when they're feeling really connected, when they're rested, when they're not rushed, like then they will do these tasks. And that's the first step. But then the next step is like this morning, for example, like we woke up late and we were like having a more rushed morning, um, which I really try not to do. But I was like, okay, like we actually do have to get ready a little faster today. And he ran and quickly got ready and like put his shoes on, put his clothes on, and all that stuff. And I was like shocked because normally, if he's not feeling as connected, he wants me to help him with all of that. But I think,
Yeah.
and sometimes we've been rushed in the past, and he's like, I don't care. I still want you to do it all. But
Yeah.
I think that that happens over time. Like you finally get that little moment of gold, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, like all of that work of like saying yes and helping even when we were rushed, then finally it finally
That's
works where
good.
it's like,
Yeah.
oh, they actually like that like it would help me out. And all this whole concept of like making them your little helper or like training helpfulness and training like togetherness, I think then helps them like want to be on your team and like help you.
Yes. Yes. And I love that too about not being critical when they are helping you and
Helping.
learning the
Yes.
skill. Like
Mhm.
because they're learning a new skill. If you want to foster a love of baseball in somebody,
Yeah.
you don't make it miserable for them to play baseball. You make it
Yeah.
fun for them to play baseball. And same thing with unloading the dishwasher or cutting the knives. Like it's not going to be perfect. And like you said, it requires a lot of patience. You could just cut the strawberries yourself, but
Yeah.
you're teaching him and you're investing in him so that he will be a more autonomous adolescent,
Yeah.
or preteen or whatever. I
Mhm.
want to go back too because in school we learn about errorless learning and how when you're
Yes.
teaching a skill to anyone, you want to provide opportunities for them to try without failing. Um,
Yes. Be
and so
successful.
yes, exactly, exactly. And so you kind
I
of
think a
provide
lot of these principles were like, I was like, oh, like SLPs or like PTs should read this book because it basically is like all these cultures have like mastered the art of like
with
therapy. Like,
yes, yeah, naturally. Yeah.
yeah.
It's so interesting.
Mhm.
Okay, so then the third tribe
Culture.
that is in
Yes. The third one is they talked about storytelling a lot.
mm,
And well, first of all, they talked about like, okay, you have to remain calm and wait for the child to calm down, and then you can teach the child. So we learned this, I think I learned this in a lot of parenting things. Like if the brain is in fight or flight and like they're mid huge meltdown, like no learning is happening. Like you have to get them regulated, calm down through like different coping strategies or whatever, co-regulation, and then they can be in a place where they but they do this thing, and I'm having trouble finding like if they had a name for it. But they were talking about like telling stories, and like it's almost like it reminds me of things I've heard from child psychologists where it's like you do play or you kind of act out something that already happened. So that has been really big as my son has gotten older. Like if something happens that like let's say didn't go well, or just that I think like we need to spend more time on, or like talk about different ways we could have reacted.
yeah,
um I will just like either use stuffed animals or just do it myself, like pretend to be him or pretend to be a kid
the
that this
teacher.
thing happened to. I'm
Yeah.
trying to think of a good example, but basically talking out and acting out a story. And
Yeah.
they and yes, that was just so interesting to read about because they use that strategy a lot with toddlers just to help them process their
Wait, that's
world
so interesting.
and
Because,
play and through stories.
well, that strategy is actually a trauma intervention that,
Oh
uh,
yeah.
yeah, that is recommended in The Body Keeps a Score. Like, um,
Oh,
yeah, so that's really interesting.
that's
Yeah.
awesome. They also talked about how the children in Tanzania like were allowed to have a lot of independence with like going to the little corner store by themselves, or
Mm,
going like, and this obviously has to do with the culture and safety and stuff. So our culture is a lot like I, I'm only the mom of a 3.5, almost 4 year old, so I don't really know about what age we a lot of people have consider old enough to like go do a short errand by themselves, but in like a walking distance errand. But I would guess that it's around, I don't know, 11 or 12 or something here. But they said they had like 6 year olds like who would go and get their own stuff from the corner store and knew how to stop at the street and knew how to, you know, and they said also why they felt comfortable with that is because all the other adults have this mindset of like all adults are kind of like watching out and looking out for kids and
yeah,
helping. Um,
yeah,
so I think in some small communities here, like um, I'm like at a little community coffee shop today. So I'm like, maybe if I lived right around the corner here, like I would, when my kid is like probably not 6, but like maybe like 8, like
yeah.
see if they could. We have practiced again, practicing a bunch of times where we've always gone and gotten the coffee. And even now, like I let Shop order for us at like our favorite taco place,
I
and
love,
they always laugh and like, but he loves it. Like he
yes,
feels so important that he ordered and he remembered all the things, and it's such good like SLP school, like it's such good like sequencing and like
working
memory, like look
memory.
at this executive function to
Yes.
be able to um practice. And like you said, that's so like it helps them feel so successful, and there's really no way to fail. Like I guess I could have to step in and be like, oh, you forgot the guacamole, but it's not a huge
No, and right,
not
you
a
could
high
just
stakes
whisper that to the
yeah
cashier. Like you could just whisper
yeah
that to the cashier. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it's like you
yeah
build that is very esteemable. You build self-esteem by doing esteemable acts, and the ability
yeah
to uh, do your whole menu, like tell your parents' orders to the cashier when you're 4.5. That makes you feel good.
Yes, exactly. And another one, this kind of goes back to, and I haven't read this book yet, but maybe we should read it for one of our book club episodes.
Yeah.
But the Jonathan Haidt book, I don't know if I'm saying his name right, but the one about the anxious generation, like
Oh, my
it's a
brother's reading that. Yeah.
yes, it's a new book that's talking about like delaying screen or delaying smartphones until age 16. That's like his main recommendation.
Yeah.
But he basically is just saying like kids need to be outside, like we need to give them back their childhood, like we need to make childhood like a time for play and a time for, you know, interacting with peers and the world, and not on a screen and not in social media. And that's going to help our mental health rates and blah blah blah. So that's my very short understanding of
Yeah.
his mission. Uh, but that and he thinks that it needs to be like a community decision, because he says that like if we are just the only ones in certain homes saying no phones until you're 16, then like that isolates the child, and then their whole world is happening online with all their friends and they're not part of it. But
Yeah.
he's saying like everyone makes a decision like, hey, we're going to delay smartphones, we're going to delay social media. Then like if you have your communities and parent friends all deciding that, then like that lets the kids interact in other ways and like use a regular flip phone to call each other, or
Right.
you know, like meet up after
Meet up.
school and play outside, and like
Yeah.
have like more of the things that really matter in childhood that we're realizing now that we are
Oh,
not
yeah.
having
Well,
in
and
this
it kind
culture.
of goes back to like this vision of a village, you know, that like it
Yes.
takes a village to raise a child. It's like to have this village, like you could be able to send your child to go get something at 7 years
Yeah.
old, you know, if you knew the corner store person, if you knew whatever. I'm listening to this book, and there's this 7-year old in like Portugal in the early 1900s, and
Mhm.
she starts like shepherding, you know, sheep, and because she's just
Yeah.
like able to do that because you know she
She's
has the
learned.
skills. And yeah, so it's just
That's so
interesting.
cool.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I just realized that I'm talking so long, so I want to hear about your book. That was the main, um, yeah, those
Yeah.
were my main takeaways
Oh,
from
wonderful.
Another Parent.
Okay.
So, I would love for anyone to tell us what you have thought about it, or yeah, just what you if you've employed any of these strategies and how it works. Oh,
Yeah,
and the one
absolutely.
that I was saying is crazy that she that she employed. She let her kid decide their own bedtime. They talk about like if you just like get more hands off and like let kids do their thing, then they become more in tune with their own body and like more cue based and stuff.
Oh
And
my
so
God.
it's called minimal interference, and it reduces conflict and gives children practice entertaining and taking care of themselves, becomes more independent. So anyway, you can read it to like learn more about that concept.
Okay,
But one that she
amazing.
did was like she waited. She said it was really hard at first, but like she would just wait for the kid to start deciding that they were tired instead of having like a bedtime. And she said that it was very helpful, but
Oh my
I
God.
haven't quite tried that one
Yeah,
yet.
I know. I'm like, oh my gosh, but to each
Like
their
that
own. You know,
sounds terrifying.
and I feel like take what you want and leave the rest. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
take what's helpful. And
take what applies to your culture. I mean, some things, yeah, like for us, maybe that wouldn't work because we are trying to go to school at 9 o'clock in the morning,
yes,
right? So
yeah,
maybe their culture, they don't have to get up as early. So,
yes, yes,
um,
amazing. Well, I would love to keep doing episodes like these, book clubs where we summarize
mhm,
books. So next time,
mhm.
I think all we could do different ones and maybe try for it once a month. So if you're enjoying
Yes.
these, let us know. And yeah, see you next time.
Okay. Thanks. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you are interested in learning more about attachment feeding or have any feedback for us at all, please email us at thefeedinghourpodcast@gmail.com. You can also sign up for our email list in the link in the show notes to be the first to know when a new episode is released. See you next time, and happy feeding.